Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. Appreciate you guys tuning in, joining us as we talk about firearms policy. You name it, we're talking about right here on Coffee with Craig. So thank you for liking and sharing this video feed so that your friends can join in the conversation. And also, please make it a point to like our Facebook page, follow us on Facebook, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can join in the conversation as it is happening. Also, please support our sponsors, Sacramento Black Rifle, Sparks Black Rifle, two of the West Coast premier firearms retailers who don't just sell firearms, but they also support your right to keep and bear arms by supporting us here at Coffee with Craig. Also, FPCgear.com, FPCgear.com. You want to wear all the cool T-shirts, all the cool kids have them. They're supporting their Second Amendment rights, and they're looking good doing it, and you can be doing it too. Just go to FPCgear.com. Now that kind of leads me into into today's topic. Supporting the Second Amendment is always interesting. Hearing to Californicate the gun laws in other states to make them more like California, and at times we're able to actually stop them working with local organizations that are there on the ground in those states, and which, by the way, we are on the ground in the state of Oregon. Our lobbyist, you guys have met Phil Watson. You've talked with Phil. But it's really great when some of these we get, because some of these folks just have absolutely no idea what we're talking about. An initiative, Initiative 43, IP 43, which was invalidated by the Supreme Court there in Oregon. It was invalidated by the state Supreme Court. Now, first and foremost, I think just on its face, there's a lot of confusion, or at least by those who are putting forth this particular initiative, and really a demonstration that they had absolutely no idea what they were talking about. And there's a representative named Bill Post, who's actually done a very effective job, in my opinion, of utilizing social media to talk to people there in Oregon about why in particular this initiative is so bad and so confusing, and which is a big part of the reason why the initiative would eventually wind up getting, make it so that it would not be able to make the ballot. But here's just a real snippet from a live feed that he did, just talking about really how stupid this initiative was, even when it was initially being proposed back a few months ago. Here, check it out.
If, that's a big if, okay? If this were to get to the ballot, I want to show you a couple of things. This is a Ruger LC9, okay, with a 7-shot magazine. All right. It says in there if it can hold 10 rounds of ammunition or more, then it's out. Okay, so apparently this one would be legal, but when I put the 10-shot one in, it would not be legal. Yeah. Okay. Here's another one. It talks about shotguns. So here's my shotgun. It has the dreaded pistol grip. It's a pistol grip. That makes it an assault weapon. Okay. I mean, I know I know most of you understand that I'm mocking. This is now an assault weapon because it has a pistol grip. Oof. This is a much more lethal shotgun with the pistol grip than without. See how it looks? See,
the pistol grip, Mr. Post, made it scary looking. And the fact that it was black really didn't help. But I appreciate Representative Post. You know, he does a very good job of working to make sure, kind of bring some common sense to the discussion when it comes to the Second Amendment there in Oregon. So anyway, so he was sharing really some of the really basic issues with this particular initiative. But there's another individual that we've started working with, and he's been on our show before, Mr. Adam Kraut. He's a legal expert, but also is very informed when it comes to firearms. Now, he breaks down a little bit more kind of the legal, what the issue was. And now, please forgive him if he comes at it in a little bit of legalese. In the end, if need be, I will interpret for him and kind of give you guys just a little assistance with the understanding of what it is that's going on here. So check out what Adam has to say.
The caption inaccurately describes the registration exception. By stating that assault weapons and large capacity magazines are prohibited unless registered with the state police, the caption implies that the exception generally permits registered ownership after IP 43 goes into effect. And as you can see, that assumption is misleading and untrue. The petitioners also challenge the terms assault weapons and large capacity magazines because they do not reasonably identify the subject matter of IP 43, and instead are impermissibly deceptive, confusing, and under-inclusive. The petitioners argued that people would only perhaps understand the term in reference to things like military-style weapons and their magazines, but not in the context of the wide array of commonly owned firearms that would fit into the definition. They also argued large would imply a number far greater than 10 in terms of capacity, but would regulate magazines that barely exceeded that threshold. The court again agreed that the caption could accurately state that the proposed measure would criminalize the possession and transfer of many semi-automatic weapons, as well as magazines holding over 10 rounds. The petitioners also challenged what would have happened with the yes and no result statements had this thing actually made it to the ballot. Consistent with that determination about the caption, the court ordered the Attorney General modify the yes results as the wording was misleading about the nature of firearms that would be legal if registered. The language in the no statement was also challenged because it implied certain people were barred from purchasing rather than possessing firearms. You know them as prohibited persons. Lastly, the language used in the summary was also challenged. Once again, the summary suffered the same defect as the caption and the result of the yes statement by implying firearms registered would be permissible to possess. The summary also failed to note that the penalty for noncompliance would result in a felony. It just generalized it as criminal penalties, which the court found to be insufficient. Finding a few more defects with that proposed language for the summary, the court referred the ballot proposition back to the Attorney General for modification. So, what does this all mean? Well, in order to collect signatures to get the proposed language on the ballot proposition's language has to be finalized, which as you can see, it's not. The signature deadline is July 6th, and the group supporting the initiative would need to attempt to collect 88,184 signatures in what would be an impossibly small time frame.
All right, so to make a long story short, the reason why they threw it out, if you kind of followed that whole conversation, was that the ballot language, both the title and summary, and the explanation as to what exactly the initiative did, was vague and by the way, inaccurate. And that's the thing. Firearms policy is very, very detailed. It's very specific. When you start taking something that is as highly technical as firearms, and then you start putting restrictions on it, and you starting to try and regulate that technology, it's important that whoever is drafting whatever that legislation is, whether it's an initiative or whether it's a bill in the legislature, it's important that you have someone who has an understanding of what exactly it is that they're talking about. But then also, in this particular case, when we're talking about an initiative, that when you're doing the title and summary, that it be such a way that it's not misleading. You know, one of the great examples here was when he talked about like the criminal penalties. Well, it didn't point out that specifically it's going to be a felony. Well, if it's going to be a felony, well, there's a big difference between a felony and a misdemeanor, or a felony and an infraction. So if you're going to criminalize something, if it's going to be a felony, then if it's going to be something that's going to cause you to lose very fundamental rights, like the right to keep and bear arms or the right to vote, that is something that needs to be in the initiative, or at least in the description, so that people have a better understanding of it. And then some of these vague terms, like, and I loved how Adam talked about the whole, large capacity magazines. I love how when people talk about large capacity magazines, they always talk about the 100-round drums. But no one talks about the fact that this literally would ban ownership or possession of a magazine that holds 11 rounds. Is that really a large capacity? Especially when you consider the fact that many firearms come with a standard capacity magazine of more than 10 rounds. In some cases 30, in some cases 17, in some cases 15, various different amounts in terms of what those magazines are able to hold. I think regulating firearms via the initiative process is very dangerous. It's dangerous, once again, because it is so highly technical and because there are a lot of mistakes. And quite frankly, because it is so highly technical, literally when someone doesn't know, they could wind up doing jail time. And in the case of this particular initiative, they could wind up doing jail. They could wind up becoming felons because because the language wasn't very clear. And that's what the Oregon State Supreme Court decided. Now, as was stated, the initiative was sent back to the Attorney General in order to correct it. And the reason it didn't make the ballot was because there was no way that they were going to be able to get it corrected and get the amount of signatures that they were going to need in time in order to get it on the ballot, which likely means, or it possibly means, that this is going to be seen again. So, those of you who are in the state of Oregon, those of you in the state of Washington, because I'm sure you're going to see something like this there too, or in Nevada, please be wary. Please be ready to fight. They've already said in Washington and Oregon, Nevada, they want to build a West Coast wall of gun control, which means they want to come after your guns. It's important that we stand up. It's important that we fight. It's important that we make our voices heard. I know you get tired of us and other organizations constantly saying this, but it's the truth. And here's the thing. Every generation is going to fight all the time. The enemies don't just disappear. So I know you get tired of hearing this. I know you get tired of fighting. But guess what? We're going to be doing it again. We're going to be doing it next year when the legislative session starts, because somebody is going to propose something that is going to seek to take away part or all of your right to keep and bear arms. Next election cycle, somebody's going to introduce something that is going to take away part or all of your right to keep and bear arms. So it's important that we just dig in, that we hunker down and realize this is going to be a long-term fight. And just for those of you who are thinking, well, gee, maybe I'll go to a more gun-friendly state like Idaho or California, Idaho or Texas, let me tell you, you're not the only ones looking to move to those states. The anti-gun, anti-civil rights people, they're not looking at it from that perspective. They're thinking, well, that's a more affordable place to go to move to. That's a place where there actually are some jobs where I can move to. But they're bringing their anti-gun politics with them. So you can run, but you cannot hide. So those of you in Oregon, those of you who supported the folks who fought this thing in court, excellent job. Get ready to do it again. Celebrate the victory. It's time to move on to the next fight. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for those of you who are fighting every single day for our right to keep and bear arms. And thank you for those who are supporting us as we help fight for your right to keep and bear arms. We are the Firearms Policy Coalition, the home of the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.